Guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're back for episode 2 of Shirt Talking, and we're really excited to bring, well, for me, a familiar face, but maybe not so much of you who spend a lot of time on YouTube, but you may have caught him on Instagram. It is Andy's Football Shirts. Let's bring Andy straight in and say good afternoon on this wonderful Friday afternoon. We're bringing him in on a countdown. 3, 2, 1. There you go. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, before we went live, Andy and I were having a quick chat about things we can chat with. If you are watching us live, and as you can hear, I've actually got this playing on another system, so we'll turn that down. But if you are joining us live and you want to ask us a question, fire away. We can't confess to know the answers to everything, but if you want to know a little bit more about my journey, Andy's journey, or if there's a hot topic, of which there are lots in the news at the moment, then fire your questions in the chat. But we wanted to spend 45 minutes just chatting, Andy and I, about our experiences collecting. You may have seen Andy on other YouTube channels. I know Roland over at My Soccer Universe had a really good chat with Andy last year. And as I say, if you've not followed Andy on Instagram, well, pop his Instagram bio in the description after we've recorded this. He has got some amazing shirts. Andy, tell us a little bit about yourselves before we get chatting for those who may have never seen you before.
Sure. Like you say, I mainly operate over on Instagram. Mainly just pictures of my shirts. Don't get too creative there. I actually started it as mainly sort of like an archive just for my own sort of login purposes, to sort of keep a track of my collection, because most of it ends up in boxes and things like that. So yeah, you can find me over on Instagram. And a little bit about me: I'm from a wee town in the south of Scotland called Dumfries. My hometown was Queen of the South. Later on, I moved up to Dundee to go to uni, and then subsequently moved down south. And I've now lived in Oxfordshire for about 13 years. My now wife, her and her family are big Evertonians. So when I met her, I started following Everton as well. So I collect Everton shirts. In fact, that's probably, it's been one of the main focuses of my collection for around 7 years, I would say. Well, since 2017, I would say. So yeah, 6 or 7 years now. But I collect all sorts of shirts from, like I mentioned, Queen of the South, Scotland, bit of Glasgow Rangers as well, and yeah, all sorts of big and small international teams and clubs. Bit of an eclectic mix, but I do have a focus on a few different teams and players and things like that.
And hopefully we can chat a little bit more as we go through. I mean, this is an unlikely partnership, given, as you say, you're an Everton fan. Those who watch my channel know I'm a big Liverpool fan, and we've got an Englishman and a Scot. But today we're both passionate about football shirts, allegiances aside. Just picking up on a couple of things there, Andy. We've chatted for a while, haven't we? About all sorts of shirts. I've got a video dropping probably on Sunday. You've recently done a mystery shirt box that we could probably talk about a bit later on. But your Instagram channel, as you say, you've got a lot of MATCHWORN. You're very passionate about Queen of South. What always strikes me whenever you post is the narrative, the story you've got. For you, there's a real story behind every shirt you own. I mean, is that your approach to collecting, or I guess what immediately catches your eye? Is it because of the story, or is it the design of a shirt? And how do you assess what shirts you're going to add?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I like some of the more I like some of the more trendy or fashionable shirts that you might get from teams that really have got no affiliation to me anyway. So I'll happily collect them if they come up and I like them. But yeah, I do like to focus on some of the, in terms of like Queen of the South and Everton, I'll more or less collect any shirt regardless of how good looking it is. There's certain shirts that are nicer than others, of course, but you know, for instance, if it was a bog standard Everton shirt, but it was a match worn, for instance, then I'd happily add it into collection and then just quickly move on. But yeah, I think it's a bit of both. But in terms of the sort of stories or the caption I put on Instagram, that's something I've been trying to do the last year or so. I wasn't actually really doing that before. I was more sort of just putting the picture of the shirt up and just saying the team and the year and whether it was home or away and whether it was, you know, replica, match worn, match issue, whatever. Just sort of a very quick description. But like I said, in the last year, I've tried to put a wee bit more information on there in terms of, you know, what the shirt means to me, if it has any meaning to me, or maybe like just a wee description of the player, you know, if it's got a name set on it about the player, maybe about, you know, for instance, if it was an Everton shirt, maybe their career at Everton, how many appearances they made, things like that. I try to put a bit more detail in, so it's not just a picture. There's a bit of text for people to read as well.
I think that's. I mean, I spend a lot of time on my phone. I mean, my wife moans constantly, but it's often a combination of trying to find the bargain. You know, spending time on eBay, Vinted, or Depop. Although Depop, I don't know if that's a platform you're familiar with, but it just feels to have gone off the ball a little bit. But then following, you know, people like yourselves on Instagram or others on Twitter, and filtering through, because, you know, there are so many opportunities to pick up good shirts, but equally it feels like the sector is the wrong word, but this world we live in as shirt collectors is moving so rapidly, is expanding in terms of special versions of shirts. It is really, really challenging. I mean, as my experience trying to build my Liverpool collection back, I think I've got back to now. I had a look the other night. I've got all the shirts going back to about 2000 now, which I've done in a relatively short time. But I'm now back at that phase where, you know, each purchase is starting to cost a few more pounds.
Yeah.
But also I find myself regretting decisions of the past, because a lot of these shirts I actually owned as a teenager or as a young adult growing up. And when I was strapped for cash, you basically got whatever you could take, stick it on eBay, and now I'm probably going to end up paying 3 times what I sold those shirts for. Do you ever shy away from things, or are you quite an impulsive sort of guy?
I think like you sort of touched on there, I'm thinking about my purchases a bit more recently, certainly, you know, since the beginning of 2023, just because I've got so many shirts now that if I want to add something in,
how many have you got? What's the current total?
I don't know. I think it's comfortably over 200. Whether it's 300 or not, I'm not sure. I always think to myself, if one day I can get to a point where my Instagram's fully up to date, then I'll know, because I'll just know how many posts I've got. That's why now I've tried to restrict my shirts to one post only, because I used to post the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt, and then maybe a picture of a player wearing it that I've got off the internet or whatever. But now I just post one post per shirt, and I have, you know, a number of images. So I'll have front, back, you know, close-ups, pictures of it in action, all in one post. And like I say, I like to think that one day, once I finally caught up, then I'll know, right, okay, if I've got 300 posts or 400 posts, then I'll know, right, that's the number. And then I'd like to hope that then when shirts come in, they'll then go straight on to Instagram, and it will be a sort of rolling thing thereafter. That's the theory.
Do you have much of a turnover in your collection, or do you typically, once it's there?
Not now. I did have a bit of a turnover a couple of years, or a few years ago now. Like you said, there was quite a lot of shirts I've just put up on eBay, and I sort of went a wee bit off collecting for a wee while. And a few of them I'm not so bothered about selling, but some of them now I wish that I'd kept. Like, there is a bit of regret there, I guess. But like you say, you're just in that time and place, then that's just how you are. You can't really help that, in hindsight.
I must admit, I suffer from FOMO every now and then. I found myself at the start of this year thinking, well, I need to get a grip on this hobby of mine. Maybe later on we can talk about supportive partners and partners embracing our perceived hobbies, which I always maintain it's an investment. It's not a throwaway thing. We could be going out and drinking ourselves silly or gambling or whatever, but at least with a lot of these collections, if push came to shove, and I think I often see it on Twitter, and people need to sell on collections because they've got other financial priorities, you've got a reasonably good chance of getting at least the same return, if not a better return. But I have found myself in positions where that fear of missing out on something has led me to purchase stuff that 3 or 4 months down the line, I'm going through the rail and thinking, why did I buy that? I was certainly guilty of doing that with a whole bunch of African Umbro shirts on M&M Direct, when I think there was a perception I was getting good value.
Yeah.
And actually, when I look back, I think, why? Was I a rabbit caught in the headlights where I thought I've just got to go for volume. I've just got to get shirts in the collection. So I've certainly this year tried to, I guess, facilitate my new purchases with the sale of others rather than dip into my everyday disposable income. Doesn't always go to plan, mind you.
Yeah.
Do you set yourself budgets, or do you just tend to, if there's something you want, you either wait for it or you're prepared to jump in and get it if the price is right?
Yeah, I don't really set a budget. There's certain shirts that I won't buy just because they're too much. For instance, like, some of the Everton MATCHWORNs, you get to a certain age point where they're just like, unless you can pick up one at, a cheaper, like below what they're actually worth, then I don't really touch them, just because they get, the price is too high. But in terms of setting budgets, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever, I don't really get into that. I just look at it, if there's a shirt that I want and it's a price that I think is fair or reasonable, then I'll go ahead and get it. If I need it. But it's interesting what you touched upon there about the FOMO, because I think there's a couple of elements to that. I think there's the one where you maybe described there, like the M&M stuff, the bargains, and then there's also the sort of special editions or rare or match-worn shirts that you don't want to miss out on as well. So I think there's a couple of different ways that you can look at missing out. But I've tried to, like you, take a step back from that, because, for instance, the new Scotland shirt that came out earlier this week, I haven't even bothered to try and get it. I've got a mate of mine who's actually a Mexican guy. He lives in Canada and he wants one, and I'm going to try and get one for him. But I'm not bothered about getting one myself. I just feel like, I think the price they're asking for is too much, and also I think it might be one where it might pay off to just wait in the short term and play a bit more long game and see if more come out, or maybe even if more stock arrives, or if it arrives at a slightly discounted price further down the line. I don't know, but I just think there was a lot of hype around that, and I think the SFA built that up a bit much. I just thought it was handled poorly, if I'm honest, and there was a lack of transparency about the price or whether it would be limited edition or not, and I'm still not clear. There's no mention at the moment whether if it's limited or how many it's limited to. They haven't said a word. And then the price only came out when it was released. It was £90, whereas your regular full price Adidas is 70, I believe. So there's a £20 markup there. I'm not sure why, but there you go.
The stadium version, yeah.
I think there is only one, Matt. I think there is only one version. I don't. So yeah, it's just £90 for your regular Adidas shirt. I mean, it's a really nice shirt, but yeah, just as you said there, I'm just trying not to get caught up in that, fear of missing out on it. I just think, oh well, we'll see.
I mean, two occasions. If I think back to the last few years, on 2 occasions, I think I've gone either way. So the really nice Norway shirt that was sort of that ice blue effect. I resisted buying that when it was first released, and then it was probably within a month or two. I think someone posted a discount, and I ended up picking it up. I think for 40 quid. Which for me, for that shirt, because I like that shirt and it remains in the collection. If anything, in time, I'd love to get a Haaland name set. But then there was this classic one, which I did bite the bullet, and it was actually on the way to the classic football shirts pop-up they had in London. And I walked, they were literally right around the corner from the Adidas shirt. And I must admit, I did pay full price to this one. But again, it's one of those shirts that isn't likely to move on from my collection. And I was quite happy with that one, given the nature of that shirt. But I mean, if anyone was going to say to me, give me some advice, I would always say it. And unless you absolutely have to have a shirt, hold off. I think in your video with Roland, you talked about, that shirt will always come around again at some point. And every now and then you might miss the boat. If I think back to last season, and again you'll probably cringe, but this was elusive to me. Now, when this came out, I love this shirt, and I held off, and of course that shirt, out of all last season, held its value. It sold out. It wasn't available in the sales at the end of the season, and it has held. And I managed to pick up the stadium version with a Salah name set on for a really good price. But the Vapor ones are still going for 110, 120 plus now. So I think, it can be a long game with certain shirts.
I was just going to say that I actually went the opposite way to you on the Norway, and then ended up regretting it because well, at the time they actually even weren't for sale in the UK, I think. So I could get them from this place called, I don't know if you ever come across them, Unisport in Denmark.
Yeah.
But they don't ship to the UK since Brexit, because we now live in Brexit Britain. So I had to get it shipped via friends. Then of course, like a few months later, they were then suddenly for sale in the UK, and they were. I only still paid the retail price. Don't get me wrong, I didn't overpay on it, but I just obviously it was the effort of getting it from Unisport in Denmark and shipped to a friend elsewhere where they could ship to, and then shipped on to me. So it was a bit extra effort, but then, like with the 3 Little Birds one you've got there, that never happened with that. That just didn't come available again. And it, like you say, it held its price. So it can go both ways.
Okay, it can. And I would always rather pay far less than RRP where I can. But yeah, I think there are some shirts where they've held their value, and therefore the right in point was at retail price. I certainly found this season with the Liverpool shirts, and I don't know how you found it with Everton, I held off getting ones printed with name sets until Black Friday. And I did it this year more for the fact that I didn't want to get to the end of the season and miss out in the same way as I did with that away shirt, although it came around eventually. And there are some bargains. I mean, look, think back to the World Cup. I remember, and I can't remember if it was on our little Instagram chat, the morning after Germany were knocked out, and I was on a train. I was actually going into London on a rare occasion, and Adidas had reduced it to £35 with name set printing, and I absolutely smashed that. I was straight onto it, but it is crazy how some shirts you'll find that, whereas other shirts you just you won't see any movement. Have you got hold of all this season's Everton's? Have you got MATCHWORN this season yet? I can't recall.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of shirts here actually. I've got one. So in terms of Everton, if you're just collecting replicas, like modern ones, is dead easy. So he's like, you're not likely going to miss out. The only thing, couple of only couple of things where I've seen quite a big demand for in recent years was they did a couple of warm-up tops. There was one they did which was kind of like an American one, so it had the stars and stripes on it.
Mm-hmm.
A warm-up top. Quite a lot of hype on that, and then it was, first of all, it was only available to their American people, supporters in their American supporters clubs, which was cool. That was fine by me, because it wasn't like it was the stars and stripes. That was the whole point of it. So it was available to them first, and then it was on general sale, and I think they quickly sold out. I grabbed one, and then the other warm-up top was like one Hummel done. It was like a Pride one. They did one, I think, for Southampton too, where it had like a bunch of different coloured stripes, sort of graphic design all over. But yeah, those two warm-up tops are the only things that spring to my mind, at least in terms of hype or like difficult to get. But yeah, I mainly my Everton stuff is match worn or issued or prepared or whatever, and I've got one of excuse me, I've got one of this season's ones here, which is one of, admittedly it's been a rotten season for Everton, but when I saw this one piqued my interest just because well, it's a Poppy shirt, so I always like to get a Poppy shirt.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about this one was it was a cup shirt as well, because usually the Poppy shirts have always been Premier League shirts. They just always tends to have fallen on that weekend. Whereas this week they had a Premier League fixture and a League Cup fixture. So this is like the Carabao Cup, EFL League Cup version, and this one wasn't worn, but it was prepared for Idrissa Gana Gueye. So he wasn't involved in it was a match at Bournemouth where we lost to Bournemouth twice in 1 week, right before the World Cup. At that point, it probably should have sacked Lampard during the World Cup, and then done something, made an earlier move, so to speak. But they didn't. They stuck with him. But yeah, so Bournemouth hammered them, but Ghana didn't play. So in a way, I'm kind of pleased it was a player that didn't play, because can't really lay the blame at him for that defeat. So I picked up that one, and I've got a few other shirts here that aren't yet on my Instagram. I don't know if we want to take a look at them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how shall we start? I'll start with the Queen of the South one, which I just got recently. Actually, I think I actually maybe showed it to you on the DM, but it's from 1998, I think, and it's a match worn home shirt in long sleeves, and it's got this kind of sort of, I don't know if you call it like a marl pattern, like a sort of interesting pattern there. This is just one of those shirts that classic football shirts might describe as like self-manufactured, because there's no like actual proper it's got a generic sportswear tag.
I know what you mean.
But it's just like there's no. It's just the logo and the sponsor, which is just a local Italian restaurant. And then the best bit about it, aside from the long sleeves, is it's actually got like a stitched number.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the camera's picking up on that.
I mean, that's a classic 90s shirt. I mean, you can tell just looking at it. I mean, and actually looking at that, stitching that number, I mean, it could be forgiven thinking it was a little bit older than that. But I just love that. It's that. I mean, you talk about sort of self-manufactured. I know my local team, Gillingham, went through a period where I think it was Gillingham Leisure manufactured their own shirts for a few seasons. Yeah. And they've also had some quite obscure manufacturers. And when I say obscure, I guess obscure in the sense of us seeing it in England. I mean, we obviously see obscure manufacturers when we see African club shirts or Asian club shirts. Yeah. But I love that. That sort of nod to a local business sponsoring.
Well, Queens have been doing it for ages now, whereby it's actually a raffle. I don't know if I've told you this before, or if I maybe mentioned it on a chat with Roland. I honestly can't remember. But they do a raffle, so local businesses can enter for a set price, and for that price, they're actually given one season ticket. So if you're like a business owner and you're a fan of the club, or even just a casual fan, it kind of makes sense to buy into it, because it's not a whole lot more money than, say, a regular season ticket. I mean, I'm not sure exact figures, but let's say it's the cost of maybe it's the cost of 2 season tickets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you will get given one, and then your business goes into the draw, the raffle to win the sponsorship. So it's really interesting that. So they've been doing it. They were I think a few other Scottish clubs have done it are also doing that now, but I think Queens, if I'm correct in saying, were the pioneers of that, certainly in Scotland anyway, in terms of the sort of raffle concept, because it enables them to get a whole lot more money than they would get regularly. Let's say they get, 100 companies giving them, I don't know, 500 quid, let's say. That's 50 grand. Now, would they be able to command 50 grand? Probably not. From say one business, would they see the value in that? So yeah, that's interesting. And you're right in what you're saying about the Stitch number. It probably was, even by 98, was probably a little bit outdated, but they obviously done it this season for whatever reason they done it. And I just like that. It's that classic number. Even you would see it in Italy with like Napoli or whoever. It's that all the numbers look the same wherever you are in the world, to that classic cloth number,
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember fondly the era where you played 1 to 11, and player names didn't exist, but that's the world we live in. And I mean, match-worn shirts. I mean, you and I both own lower league match-worn shirts. I mean, 2 reasons. I mean, I think the first reason is, as a Liverpool fan, it's just not financially possible for me to collect Liverpool match-worn shirts. I've been fortunate that the 2 or 3 that I've got, and I think I've got a match prepared, I've got a pre-season worn, and I've got a European match worn, I managed to get directly from a Liverpool collector. There was a real strong sort of backstory, so I knew the origins of it, and actually he was very fair in his pricing. But I do quietly weep when I see that the figures some of these shirts go for. And so for me to have a lower league shirt, I mean, I quite like the league patches of the lower leagues, and actually I quite like the name sets, because I like the fact that they're sponsored by charities. I mean, Mind previously sponsored, I think, is it the Red Cross now sponsor the league name sets?
They just changed it. I think they literally changed it this season. I think it's British Red Cross now.
And we can talk a little bit about lower league sides. There are some stunning designs in the lower leagues. There's perhaps a little bit more flexibility to play around with patterns and designs, but also in this world where you hear stories of multiple shirts being prepared for the Messis and the Ronaldos, and multiple shirts per game. In the lower leagues, especially post-COVID, where there isn't a level of money, when you genuinely get a match-worn shirt, you can tell it's been worn, and it's actually probably got a better story to it than picking up a Premier League shirt.
Well, I'll show you this one behind me, just because while you're on that subject. So this is one, obviously Queen of the South. This is from, let me get this right, I think it's 0102. But it was actually used the following season as well, just with a different sponsor. So for whatever reason, I always really liked this shirt, and it just didn't really ever come, didn't really ever come up for sale, even in a replica. But in the last year or so, I've seen 3 for sale, and I've ended up buying them all. And they're all different. So first of all, I bought this one, but in short sleeves, just a replica version. I mean, there's no difference between the players and the replica, but you know what I mean. It's not a match worn with no number or anything on it. And then I saw the following season's one come up, just the same short sleeves, but with a different sponsor. And then I bought that. And then recently, this one came up for sale, and it's a lot like a long sleeve match worn. So just like you were talking there about interesting sleeve patches things. This one's got Bell's whiskey.
Oh, lovely.
I'll show you that.
Oh, that's great.
So it's got the SFL logo, Bell's whiskey, on both, and they're actually intact. To actually to get these shirts where these patches are intact it's not easy, because like you say, they and like you mentioned earlier about wearing 1 through to 11. That's what Queens would have done at the time, and there's no names either. So this is number 7 shirt, and it's obviously, you can see it would have been used throughout the season. Yeah. So at this time, at the turn of the century, the players probably, they wouldn't have been, the players wouldn't be given shirts anyway. The shirts would just stay with the kit man, and it would be 1 to 11, plus the substitute. So it might go up to 16 or 17, let's say. And it would probably be 1 short sleeve and 1 long sleeve. And then if it got really damaged beyond repair, they would probably replace it, at one point. So yeah, these shirts like this, I mean, I got this for a ridiculous price. It was under £40 I paid for this. And I paid about the same, to be honest, I paid about the same for the replica ones as well. But just so happened that this came up, and I saw it, and and you couldn't buy the long sleeve, you just couldn't. They didn't sell the long sleeves, not to the public, just the short sleeves. And
it's really good that it's gone to a fan. It's a club you're passionate about, and I think, I'd love to see the stats of how many match-worn shirts are not in the hands of people who generally support those. I mean, I think in some of the inflated prices you see, certainly on matchwornshirts.com, a large number of those must be being purchased by corporates or companies as well, because some of these prices are just crazy. But I think to know that shirt has graced the field on a number of occasions, you got signs of wear, so there's no disputing that it's been used. You do feel for, you feel for kit men in the Premier League, although I suspect they've got bigger teams around them that are having to print week on week multiple shirts. Maybe some of these lower league kit men, possibly get a better deal. But that said, I guess in the world of collecting as it is now, there's always going to be hordes of people hanging over the terraces trying to get a kit at the end of the game.
I think now even in the lower leagues, well, certainly in Scotland anyway, they'd maybe have 2 or 3 shirts per player, but then it might, they may get replaced at some point along the way, with if one got too damaged, like I say, if it got too damaged beyond repair, or if they gifted it to someone, let's say, then they might prepare them another one. But certainly in the Premier League, it's 3 shirts per game, Yeah.
I know last year, as part of the fundraising we do, I reached out to quite a few clubs, to talk about the story of what I do and how we came to do it and support the charity we are. And, we always had a nice response, even if it wasn't a positive response. And what was very clear were 2 things. One, there were commitments to player sponsors. And I know you yourself sponsor Queen of the South players, so that first and foremost. But secondly, I think it was a kit man from Bolton sent me a note and said, I'll hook up with you at the end of the season, but right now my kit budget is pretty much maxed out. So some of these clubs are working to quite strict budget controls as well, and you can understand it, as well as players wanting to retain a memento from a season themselves or keep it within a family, which is totally understandable.
So they probably, for instance, if we take Queen of the South as an example, and imagine it's much the same amongst the lower leagues of Scotland, certainly like I said, they would probably have 3 shirts, and then depending on how many sponsors they could, some of the star players, let's say, they might get 2 or 3 sponsors, whereas some of the other squad players might only get 1 or maybe not even any sponsors. So sometimes the shirts would go to the sponsors, and then maybe they would keep, the kit man would let the player keep 1, for instance, as their own memento at the end of the season. So by the time all that happens, they're few and far between.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I've certainly noticed a lot of teams now are using eBay as a vehicle. I picked up a couple of MATCHWORNs start of this season from last year. I picked one up from Walsall, one from Bradford that came direct from the club, and they obviously want to fundraise and support their own foundations. Nothing frustrates me more than seeing a whole rasp of good value MATCHWORNs going up and going, and then they reappear from the same seller the week later at triple the price.
Yeah,
and that was certainly the case with Walsall. Where I think a lot of those MATCHWORNs were going for around £40-45. I think I picked mine up for £42 with a certificate of authenticity. I think they threw a couple of programs in, and they're now on eBay and continue to be on eBay for £100 or more, and they're not selling. And that frustrates me because they're sharks. I'm not ashamed to say that they dive in there, grab these, not for commercial reasons, but actually there are probably fans out there or collectors out there who would really value that and can't afford those prices. And going back to that Everton shirt, I love the Carabao Cup sleeve patches, and I think you've inspired me certainly this season. Perhaps I need to try and pick up a second Liverpool home shirt or something and stick some Carabao patches on, or actually maybe see last season, because they got to the final, maybe work up a shirt with a match detail. But it really does jump out. It jumps out for me more than the FA Cup sleeve badge does.
Yeah, but this one a little bit interesting. Sometimes you get little quirks, let's say, with the Everton kit man. His name's Jimmy Martin. He's quite a character, but basically he doesn't always do things correct. For instance, this is actually last season's Carabao Cup patch. The new one this season is it's more like a felt one. The type with the sort of some of the raised details.
So that's is that more rubberized, the one there?
No, this one's more like a coarse surface to it. I don't know if the camera can pick up on, but it's basically last seas's. So
he had old stock to use up. Makes sense.
Yeah, so he just had it, and then there's a
look after the pennies, even for a Premier League club. Look after the pennies, pounds a little.
Yeah, or just I suppose maybe just had a load. And for instance, in the FA Cup, they've used patches that he's made himself with it's obviously some kind of printer.
It's got this image of him sat on a drawing board drawing it out, or tracing it out.
Yeah. So sometimes you get patches and it's not even the official patch. But obviously you can match it to the games, because if you look at the pictures, online closely enough, on Getty Images or whatever, you can actually zoom in and you can see, they did use that patch. They didn't actually use the one they should have used.
I mean, you get quite a lot of name sets on your kits, don't you? Are you a full Monty in terms of patches as well, or are you quite content with just a name set? I mean, I'm struck by that lovely Mikalenko shirt behind you. I mean that.
Yeah, so there's no patches or anything like that. It's just I got that from a guy. I got that guy from a guy in Ukraine. I just reached out and said, "Look, any chance you could get us a Mikalenko one?" I wasn't so much bothered about, just because he played for Everton. I thought it'd be nice, and also they had that's the one with the map of Ukraine on it. So it would be a nice one to add into the collection. But yeah, I do like a name set. I'm not totally hung up on them, although probably if somebody looked through my collection, they'd disagree. But I do like some of the details, especially if it's a player I like, or if it's let's say it's a number 10, or it's a player who's maybe played for Everton, then maybe at another club now. Then I like to get things like that, but or a Scottish player, for instance.
So talking about that, because you really generously donated 2 shirts a few days ago, and we unpacked them. And mate, I mean, I reached out privately to extend my thanks, but we did a video, and obviously this one struck me straight away because Mr. Godfrey there. But what's the story behind this shirt? I mean, was this a shirt you had printed up and signed? Did it come? I mean,
so I watched your video, and I'd happily explain, give a wee bit more context, I guess, to that one. So that one, I bought it, and I got it really cheap, but it was already signed. I reached out to a Norwich shirt collector to ask him, was there any because I thought it was kind of odd. The shirt was just like fully signed, so I knew it must have came from within the club at some point. And I said, look, was there any differences, between the regular and the sort of player issue versions? And he explained to me that the only difference was the size of the sleeve sponsor. So that what is it, like that quirky little? It's like a mobile game or something. Best Fiends. So when I showed him that, he explained that was indeed a player issue, just because it's the larger size patch. So that is actually a player issue shirt. I've had the league and the Godfrey name set. I got that applied, but the shirt with the player issue sponsor and the signatures, that was already on it. And then I put Godfrey, and I thought it'd be nice to get Godfrey. At the time, he's not doing. He's been playing a little bit lately. If he's been playing at left back, but so far this season he hasn't played a whole lot. But at the time he was like flying for Everton, and I thought it'd be nice to get a Godfrey name set on that. But it wasn't a shirt that I went out to get. I just stumbled upon it, and it was like, for a signed shirt, it was so cheap. And then once I received it and I found out it was a player issue, then I was even more happy. But I thought that, because I'd said to you a long time ago, look, I'd love to like donate something for you to, raise money for your causes. So I thought really that, it'd be nice if that shirt could go to a Norwich fan. So if any, if any of your viewers are Norwich fans and they want to get it, it'd be much better with them than with me. Just, if it was just Godfrey without all the signatures on it, maybe I'd think, well, I'll just go on to it. But with the signatures, it'd be better. It'd be better with a fan.
I mean, it's great that there are people in the community that we can reach out to, and as you say, if there's a significant chance that's player issue, then that's probably been won by somebody in a raffle or something, and they've not really had an interest. But my certain experience in some of the signed shirts that we've had come through that we've auctioned off, I think inevitably they do tend to go to fans. I had a lovely story, I think I might have shared with you, that I had a Preston North End donated me a fully signed shirt, and I put it up on our Twitter channel. This is probably the early part of 22, and a guy reached out and privately and said to me, look, my father's just been diagnosed with dementia. As a kid, we used to go and watch Preston together. He doesn't get a chance to go much now, so I'd like to make you an offer, because what I'm going to do is get it framed and presented it to him, which he did. That obviously got some much needed funds to support the dementia work, but he shared me a photo of his dad with the framed shirt. And for me, little stories like that, I mean, it doesn't matter whether a shirt is raising £40, £100, £200. For me, it's the fact that money is being raised to do some good. But to know those shirts are somewhere where it's appreciated, I think I would certainly be like that if it was a signed Liverpool shirt or a Gillingham shirt. That would have some meaning to me. So yeah, we will track down a Norwich fan and try and leverage some of those wonderful collectors on the group. And then the other shirt, which makes me shudder as a Liverpool fan, but nonetheless, it's a fantastic. And what amazed me was the quality of this shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, the condition of this shirt. I mean, when you look at the sponsor, but again, Rooney.
Yes, decent. So a lot of them, you see the Aeon is suffering, or maybe the little devil on the back is suffering, but that one's decent. Yeah.
And actually, I hadn't noticed the detail on this shirt. I mean, it is a really stunning design.
Yeah, I think that one's like, that design's a bit of a grower, because for me, I remember when that came out at the time, people were saying it looked like a tea towel, but it was actually like something to do with the Manchester Mills. It was
okay.
I think it was the pattern that they used, but yeah, I got it just because I thought it'd be cool to get the Rooney name set on it, because that was from, I think, Alex Ferguson's last season. That was the last shirt they won the league in. Can you believe it? So that's like 10 years, I think, now.
Crazy.
And yeah, that's actually the player issue name set. It's obviously it's the replica shirt, but it's slightly larger and it's in felt rather than plastic.
Lovely, feels good. Yeah.
And actually, the only reason I was really donating that in terms of my own sort of logic and thinking was because I've also got I want to get I don't know if you remember, they had like a hooped away shirt that was blue and black around the same time. Another Aeon one. So I've got, and I actually much prefer that. I prefer the design of it. I think it's quite unique. And I've actually got that, and I want to get that one printed with Rooney, and I think I prefer that one. And I don't need loads of Rooney Man United shirts, but just to have one would be quite nice. And actually, I prefer that. I prefer that blue and black hooped one more. So I thought, well, I can live with like letting go of the red one,
Well, no, it's much better. Well,
and if I can go, I'm sure somebody will pick that. I mean, Rooney shirts are always, people are always going to want Rooney shirts,
I mean, you obviously track players through there, but it poses an interesting dilemma for us as fans of Premier League teams, because until recently, I had a mantra which was, I don't want to own or deliberately own other Premier League shirts. There might always be the odd lower league shirt that with a team happens to come up, but for me, I wouldn't go out of my way to buy, say, from a top 6 or top 7 club.
Yeah.
Now that backfired at the start of this year when an opportunity came up to get it. I'm going to say it's mid-90s, but the classic away Tottenham shirt, the big yellow with the holster, and it had that sort of design going on. It always strikes Klinsmann to me. I think Roland saw it on Villeurbanne for €40, and it was one of those shirts that I instantly look at, and it evokes memories for me of certain players, and I did get it because I thought it was a good investment. I thought it was a fair price. But more recently, I guess I've challenged myself to think, getting shirts in my collection, I want shirts that tell a story. And I guess where we are now in the season, even as a Liverpool fan, part of me is thinking it feels this season like I need to get a Haaland City shirt because this is a defining season, given his goal rate.
Yeah.
Could well be a record-breaking season. And to have a shirt that sort of has that story, but it makes me uncomfortable at the same time. But how do you feel? Or are you more? I mean, if you got Rooney United shirts, I'm guessing you're slightly more comfortable with it.
Yeah, the only teams I would shy away. I mean, I would never wear another team's shirt, but in terms of collecting them, the only shirts I wouldn't buy is Liverpool, Celtic, and probably England's. Although recently I have been toying with the idea of the Euro 2004 red shirt, but it would have to have Rooney on it because that was
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched the Rooney thing on, was it Amazon or Netflix a couple of years ago?
No.
And it's just the nostalgia of that tournament and how brilliant he was in that moment. And that was just on the cusp of he was still an Everton player. He was just on the cusp of him moving to Man United later that summer. And he got injured, I believe. But I think fair to say they may have England may have well gone on to win that tournament in Portugal that summer. He was just so good. It was just like, he was like a teen prodigy that just was scared of nobody, whether it was, Zidane's France or, whoever he came across, he was just tearing it up until unfortunately he got injured. And then I think England went out to Portugal and then they went on to lose the final to Greece in sort of bizarre turn of events. But yeah, that's the only. So recently I've been thinking, would that actually? Do you know what I would? If I was to get any England shirt, it would probably be that one. But yeah, I haven't committed to it yet.
You'd probably pick that shirt up for a pretty good price. I mean, unless you're trying to buy an England shirt in like the 2 weeks in a run up to a major tournament. I've certainly picked up quite a few since turn of the year on places like Vinted for pennies, which then makes adding a name set or the cost of adding a name set much more palatable, because you end up with a really good shirt with a name set for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. In fact, is that the home from 2004 you're wearing, or is that a different year?
This is the reversible, isn't it? But there is no name.
2004 was that?
Is it? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I need to go on the archive, but I mean, this one. To be fair, this one is one that I've worn. I picked this up at a kilo sale, and I did wear it quite a bit. But I think, a Beckham name set possibly. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of what you were talking, like, I wouldn't mind like a Chelsea shirt with Drogba on. There's certain players that I think it'd be nice to have like a Chelsea Drogba shirt or I don't know.
We can sometimes get pulled in, can't we? Because we have an allegiance where actually we're shirt collectors, and as you say, you're not going to go around wearing it. Yeah. And I think to your point, I probably wouldn't go out of my way to buy an Everton shirt. Because of the rivalry we have. Yeah. But, that said, I think if it's a footballing icon, thinking after last night, to have an England shirt with a Kane name set on now that he's become top goal scorer, to that point, Rooney as well. I think I think for me, my focus is shifting on, and I won't give it away because it will be a future video, but you've helped me out with a shirt recently that's currently with the printers. That tells a story, and one of the things I want to do is get the 2005 Liverpool and Milan shirts, because for me that's a game that just is front of mind. If I look back over the last 30, 35 years watching football, that night, I mean, from an emotional perspective, so I think there's going to be more of a focus for me now, picking shirts that have that story. Now, I'm conscious of time, but I'm also conscious that you sent me one other shirt. And I know the video hasn't gone out and won't be going out, but we've got you here. So I think it's only right that you talk through. Now, I think the brief I gave you was to find me a shirt, a club shirt, a team that had played against Liverpool in Europe since 2005. Yeah,
that was right, yeah.
So
and your size, and I think you just wanted it in like a very good or excellent, like a good used condition, basically. Yeah.
So I would normally have published the video. Well, I would have published a video today, and then you reached out and said, let's do something. So I thought, well, let's do that. But we will share it because it's worth sharing. So here it is. So talk me through your thought process, because you did hit this one out the park. When I opened this up, I wouldn't have guessed this in a million years. So people will recognise that badge. So
So
is this a quick decision?
It wasn't. No, it really wasn't. I put a lot of thought into it. That's why I thought it'd be nice to spend 5 minutes just chatting a wee bit about. So My initial thought was, right, well, that's quite a long period. It's 17, 18 years. So that's quite, and more often than not, Liverpool would have been in Europe, more or less every season in that time, bar one or two here or there.
Five finals, so
Yeah.
plenty of games, yeah.
So then my next thought was, well, let's try and go as old as possible, so maybe like, pre-2010, let's say. So I started looking through their opponents in Europe, post the Istanbul final in 2005, sort of going through to, let's say, 2010, and just seeing what was out there. And there was a few, because I wasn't sure if you meant just a team and then any old shirt from that team. The way I took it was, you wanted a shirt that they would have worn that season against Liverpool, was the way I interpreted it as, although I don't think you explicitly said that, but that's what I thought anyway. So then I saw that you guys had played Atletico Madrid in the away to 09 season, and my first thought to myself was Aguero. I thought he would have been there. If I can find one Atletico shirt from that season with Aguero, that would be perfect. But with the budget, that was going to be a wee bit difficult, especially in like excellent condition. Because I think the budget was it £50 or £60?
It was 50,
yeah, something along those lines. So I'd imagine an excellent Aguero one would probably be closer to 100, let's say. And anyway, I found that one. Actually, I was buying a few shirts in France via Idris. So I found that shirt in France, and it looked like it was in excellent condition, and it was a really good price. And it was from that season, and I thought, well, it was blank, and I thought, well, if I can find an Aguero name set, with the remaining budget, I'll get an Aguero name set, and I'll put that on. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an original Aguero name set. I suppose they all got snapped up years ago. But I found a guy in Spain. Excuse me. Found a guy in Spain who I had actually bought from him before. He sells loads of original Spanish name sets, and I bought I've bought Barcelona ones from him, and I've bought recently last year I bought a Cadiz one because I got a Cadiz shirt and I got a original Negredo name set put on it and things. So anyway, he had some name sets from that season, and I saw that he had Luis Garcia, and I thought actually that actually might be better for a Liverpool fan than even say Aguero. And Aguero's the more iconic player, I guess, of that period. But I don't think Luis Garcia played a whole lot during that season, but he was there and he was number 9. And I thought that's an original name set. I can get that put on, and I just thought it's a perfect fit. So I just hope that you like. I hope that you like it. I thought that you would. So I'm glad that you do.
You tick the brief in every way, and I probably need to get his details because, as you know, I'm a big La Liga fan, and I've got quite a few La Liga shirts. So. And a few bars. Would you believe it? Now, I'm going to put this up on the screen because if we're okay to do 5 more minutes, Pancake Master, who I know because I've exchanged comments with him, I know he's Portuguese, Ronaldo and Messi, so we can answer that one in a moment. But I don't have a Messi name set on a shirt, although I've got a PSG away from last season that's currently with the printers, but that is a Barcelona shirt. I need to get a Messi name set, and I also don't have a CR7. Are you a Messi or Ronaldo fan, or do you sit on the fence?
I'm in the Messi camp quite firmly, and I've got quite a lot of his. Well, not his shirts, but I've got quite a lot of. I'm not that rich. I've got quite a lot of shirts with Messi name sets on from Barcelona and Argentina, and I'm always trying to add more because I just think the more the merrier. From whoever you prefer, if you can collect a number of their shirts with their name sets on, then I think in years to come that'll be you know, quite a thing. So I personally, I do that with Messi. If I was to get a Ronaldo shirt, I would probably look to get the one from those Euros, the 2004, maybe the home one. I'll actually, I would actually like the home one with Rui Costa, but I wouldn't mind the Ronaldo one as either. I just think that, because I don't think I've got any of those ones with the Nike, the Total 90, the circle around the number on the front. So if I could get a Ronaldo one, it would be the 04 Portugal. With Ronaldo, I think he would have been 17 because Figo was 7, or Rui Costa. But yeah, I think that would be a nice one to get.
I'm with you. I mean, I don't have any Messi shirt, but that is part of my plan is to try and build that out. Again, you can often pick up Barcelona shirts for relatively good price if you're patient, and name sets are out there. I'm with you. To be fair, I'm more on the Messi side, although I think each player has their own merits. You know, the statistics speak for themselves. Although I was very disappointed by Ronaldo's attitude in the World Cup, and I just and certainly his attitude with United, and I just think certain actions define people. Not in the way you'd want. I'd like to see both those players go out in the right possible way. And I just think it was the perfect storm last year, wasn't it? You know, Messi got his World Cup win at a time when Ronaldo stormed off the pitch. And I just think Messi, for me, just nudges it out. But you're right. I think regardless of what side of the fence you sit, if you've got their shirts in years to come, they will be worth a bit more. Pancake Master said there, shirt collecting is fun. 10 of my 18 jerseys are Cristiano Ronaldo. I would suggest keep building that collection out and expand your horizons a little bit, because there are some great names out there. Right, we've been talking for an hour. We've had people watching us, which is great. Andy, we'd love to do this again, and maybe we can bring in another collector or two and have an even bigger conversation. But really, really lovely to catch up and talk to you, and great to hear some of your stories. As I say, if you haven't seen Andy's channel, go over to Instagram, Andy's Football Shirts. Go check out some of those awesome match-worn shirts. Andy, I'm sure you and I will be speaking again really soon, but thanks so much for coming to the channel.
No worries. Pleasure, Matt. Nice to catch up with you.
And have a good weekend. And if you're watching this back on playback, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this. And we'll be back soon with some more shirt talking. And fire any other questions you got in the comments. And between Andy and I, we can certainly give you a response. So on that note, we bid you a fond farewell. I'm off to see what's available on Vinted. Andy's off to eBay. And who knows, we might have purchased something in the next 10 minutes. Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you all soon. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, Andy. It's all good.
Yeah, is that all finished now?